Previously on the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
You know, we're only 2 or 3 games in, depending on who you're following, into the playoffs, and I feel like the emotional investment is already so huge. I don't know what my physical and mental health will be, you know, if the Habs, like, go far. Or, you know, if you're a Leafs fan, like, I don't know how you could stand, like, this series that they're doing where every game probably is going to be in overtime. People are going to be going crazy.
People in Montreal and Toronto are going to have to take some personal days, I think, is what's going to have to happen.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is on now.
Skippy, what's happening?
Things are going okay. Usually you start the show by asking me what's happening, how's it going, and, you know, things are going okay, but I really have a lot of stuff that's like weighing heavily on me.
Well, before we get into the psychiatric portion of the show,
Yeah.
I have a specific question for you. I forgot to ask you on our last episode. I wanted to know how the soccer game was.
Oh, the soccer game. It was great, actually. I thank you for the tickets. It was a gorgeous day in Montreal, and a fun game. It's a cute little stadium that's basically just built on a patch of grass next to the Olympic Stadium. It's kind of bizarre. The parking is in the Big O. It was good, fun game, fun crowd, good atmosphere, and they won in the 90-something minute, literally the last minute of the game. There was excitement, you know, red cards, penalties, so everything the soccer game has to offer. I would go again.
Were the seats comfortable, or are they like very hard, uncomfortable?
No, they're good seats. I mean, it's not like super great, but the stadium's brand new, so you know it's a very good venue.
And what's the food situation at that stadium?
It's mostly like standard food: hot dogs, burgers, poutines. That's that kind of thing.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of choices, but like it was regular foods.
Do they do a 50-50 draw?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
They did.
All right. Well, anyway, glad you went. Glad the weather was good, and glad you had a good time.
I'm glad you gave me the tickets.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, those kind of days where you're outside and it was with my son is like, those are great days, you know? So it's kind of like, brings you back to like the purpose of going to sporting events, you know, sitting outside on a gorgeous day, you know, just having a good time, you know. So
which jersey did you end up wearing
to the game?
Yeah, you said you couldn't decide which jersey you were going to wear.
I don't have a lot, so I wore my England shirt, which was the first time I've worn my England jersey since they lost to Iceland.
It's a while ago.
Yeah, well, after they lost to Iceland, I took it right off and I threw it in the back of the closet, and I didn't know if I'd ever wear it again.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So actually, yeah. I mean, so you always start the show by asking me how's it going, and I've been doing a lot of soul searching for the last 2 days.
Why is that?
You know, we started this show, and and it's a common theme because it's come up a couple of times that you know, the first episode of our show was called Podcast Therapy. So it's basically a way for you and I to get on the air, so to speak, and like, you know, unburden ourselves of like what's bothering us, or, you know, just get things off our chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's come up a few times. Besides the first episode, I know we've mentioned it more than once about podcast therapy. And, you know, on the website, in our description of the show, you know, we kind of say this is a show about how sports affects us, right? And that's what we wanted to keep kind of the theme going. You know, of course, we talk about what's going on in sports and games and specific things, but it's we wanted to make it how it affects us. So that Montreal Canadiens loss in Game 5 got me thinking a lot. So I realized I'm in a bad relationship. I'm in a bad relationship with the team that I really love. And I know all the faults of the team. I know all the weaknesses of the team, right? We've been saying it for years, and we've been saying it since day one of this show, but we've been saying it to each other for 5 years. They have no offense. They can't score. It's completely the goalie that needs to win the games for them. And in the last however many years, that issue of scoring has never been addressed, right? It was addressed for one short period of time when they acquired Thomas Vanek, and that experiment kind of ended very quickly, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
And the GMs never addressed it. He went out at the trade deadline and got a whole bunch of fourth liners. Some of the acquisitions are great. Don't get me wrong. I love Jordy Ben. Steve Ott seems to be playing well. Like Davidson was a steal. Like these are fine, but these are role players, right? So
I don't disagree with you. In fact, I do agree with you.
yeah.
However, the only defense I'll give to Bergevin as a general manager is that there are these goal scorers that you want to get. There aren't that many of them out there, and if a team has them, they're not going to give them up.
No, I agree with that. There was nothing he could do at the trade deadline to get guys. I'm not really throwing the blame on him. I'm just saying, like, we know the strengths and weaknesses of the team. We know what it's about, right? So when the last couple of days, I've just been thinking a lot about, like, I'm so invested in this team, and like the loss was like I've been more emotionally involved in playoff runs, like I'm living or dying by it, but not as much as I had been in other years. But I just was thinking about, like, this team just continually disappoints me and I keep going back to them, right?
Yeah.
It's just a bad situation for me. And as much as they disappointed me the other night, I'm going to be back in front of my TV again tonight watching them and, hoping for the best. And, like, in reality, I mean, this series could still go either way. It's just that they're in a hole now, right? Because every single game's been close. The games, like I said, I mean, I took some flack in social media about my comments about the playoffs being all about, bounces. But, like, I'm not completely wrong about it. I mean, the winning goal was a bad bounce and it went right on the Rangers stick, and that's what happens. I mean, bad bounces happen in the regular season too. It's just that it's so hard to score in the playoffs that a lot of times a weird bounce is what decides a game. And case in point, the Senators Bruins game from last night. I mean, you listen.
Well, there were 2 overtime games last night.
Yeah.
So every game is going to overtime. Every game is being decided by 1 goal.
Yeah, and in the Bruins game, it was also decided on a weird bounce. And they interviewed Anderson, the goalie of the Senators, after the game, and he's like, "Well, they got the bounce tonight," and that's kind of way the cookie crumbles. It's just that the Canadiens' margin for victory is so slim. There's no margin for error, right? Because they don't score a lot of goals. Everything has to go their way, and against a good team like the Rangers, it's not always going to go your way.
And actually, the Rangers aren't the most high offense team either.
No, but they're a balanced team, right? They throw out a lot of guys on the ice, and it seems like no matter who's on the ice, it's always the same, right? There's always the same threat, right?
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than Nash, and Nash isn't what he used to be.
No, but
they
he
don't have
scares
that.
me.
They don't have that scary guy other than Nash.
Right now, the only guy that scares me is Nash. When he gets the puck, I'm nervous.
Right.
Or Kreider if he gets not Kreider in like when they're cycling and everything. It's off the rush that he's scary because of his speed. So
I think the Canadiens actually lucked out. I mean, they might lose the series, but they actually lucked out in that they have the easiest path to the conference finals.
They do. If they can get past the Rangers, they'll face most likely the Senators, although the Bruins hung on last night. They do have a good path. They do have a good path.
And I'm not saying that any series is easy, right? So even if they do beat the Rangers and have to play the Senators or the Bruins, it's not going to be easy. But if you look at the alternative, they're not going to have to face Pittsburgh or Washington or Columbus, who's now eliminated, until the conference finals.
Yeah.
So basically, they wouldn't have to face any of the top 3 teams in the conference until the 3rd round.
Right. Well, I mean,
so they did luck out in that sense.
Yeah.
And so, but it doesn't. I mean, again, tonight's game is probably going to be a 1-goal game. It might even go to overtime.
Yeah.
So all these games are really close. I think, other than the Anaheim series and the Nashville series, all these series are like going down to the wire. Okay, so Pittsburgh won in 5 games.
Yeah, but I mean, the Nashville series, who could have predicted that?
Nobody.
You think there's someone that predicted Nashville in 4?
Someone must have.
Someone must have, but as a joke, I mean, like, there's no way. Most people thought the Blackhawks would win, and never mind this Nashville winning in 4, right? So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I thought the Hawks would win the cup.
And same
Didn't
thing
even
with
win.
Minnesota and St. Louis. A lot of people were thinking Minnesota is going to win the cup, right?
Yeah, and they're playing game what is it, 6 tonight? Or is this afternoon, I think, actually.
Yeah, it is this afternoon. So the Blues could wrap up the series today, which would be
Yes.
pretty astounding.
It would be.
So, just back to the Canadians for one more second. I mean, after the game, I usually like to listen to the post-game shows, especially during the regular season, and I didn't listen to any Montreal sports talk radio for since the game. I haven't listened. I turned it off. I went on radio silence, literally radio silence. I couldn't take it because I know what they're going to talk about. Price shouldn't have given up. That there's always like it's so knee-jerk reaction, and the fans here are so stupid. Honestly, they are the most irrational fans. People are going to blame Price. I mean, of course, yeah, Pacioretty hasn't scored a goal, but like, what, he had a breakaway. People are like, he's wearing a C. He needs to give more. He's trying his butt off. It's just not going in. Like everyone always wants to point the blame on one player, and you know what? The first thing that happened when they traded David Desharnais was who's going to be the scapegoat now, right? Because it was
funny enough, David
scored the
Desharnais
overtime
scored the winning goal for
Yeah.
the Oilers a couple nights ago.
Yeah, who's going to be the scapegoat now? There always has to be one player that everyone picks on, right? And Desharnais is not there, so who do they pick on? The captain or Price, because you know what? I've said it before, and I will defend this statement till the day I die. There are degenerate people in this city that are still secretly hoping that Carey Price does poorly, so they can come out and say, "I told you we should have never traded Halak." There are people like this.
You can get Halak now for a ham sandwich.
Yeah, literally a ham sandwich. So
although I still like him, but
me too.
But
I like
he's
him a lot.
available for anyone who wants him.
I like him too. There was nothing wrong. Great goalie, right?
Yeah.
But they made their choice and they made the right choice. Carey
You-
Price is a great goalie. He's not playing on a great team.
Your comment about the fan base, I have to say that it's very similar here in Toronto, and I'm sure it's that way in every Canadian city that has an NHL team.
Any rabid fan base of any team, even in other sports,
Because after any Leaf game and even Raptor game and Blue Jay game,
Yeah.
they analyze the game, like they dissect every little play.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this guy should have turned his skates to the left instead of the right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And why didn't Anderson have his glove higher? Stuff like that. So they do all the same stuff here as well.
Yeah.
And there are irrational fans as well in every city who will, find someone to blame, whether it's the coach, the goalie, whatever, the defenseman. So it's very similar. It's very similar in both cities.
But I think this year in Toronto, just this year, not talking about other seasons, but this year in Toronto, I think there's this mindset like, if we win, it's a bonus.
Agreed.
And if we lose, well, there's always next year, and the future's bright as sunny is. The future's so bright they got to wear shades, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in the back of Leafs fans' minds, there's this idea that whatever we get, it's gravy. And the fact that they won, these games in the series and they're giving the Caps everything they can, more than they bargained for, is great, right? So, like, people are crazy here, and fans are just, it's overreaction to the max. So, yeah.
And so now the Canadians find themselves in a situation where they have to win 2 straight games, which they've already done that in this series.
Yeah.
So
no, I still think they could
It's not
win.
unrealistic, but then again, it might not happen either. It's really 50-50.
Yeah. So what was the year that the Bruins won the cup?
Oh, you're asking me to figure something out.
2010, I think.
I'll
So
look it up.
the year the Bruins won the cup, it was Julien versus Vigneault.
Vigneault.
Yeah, in the final. And if you recall,
It was 2011.
Yeah, Vigneault's team was up 3-2, and Julien's team came back. So Habs fans are holding out hope that history will repeat with the coaches.
The thing is, you know what? The Bruins then were better than the Canadians are now.
Yes. I do think that Vigneault is out coaching Julien right now in certain aspects, in that he's made some adjustments. I don't want to get too X's and O's like we say, but he's made some adjustment that the Habs haven't really countered, in that he's got his defensemen moving up and getting into weird positions. They pointed it out on the broadcast even. You saw like Dan Girardi in front of the net. You saw McDonough in the slot. Like they're moving around and getting into different positions. And so the Canadians have to be aware of it and also take advantage of it. And it seems to me that Julien's basically like, here's our game plan. We're sticking to it. And this is how we play. And he doesn't want to change the wheel too much, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it's a little late in the season to be starting to change, major changes.
Yeah, you have to go with what you have, but
exactly.
you can still make a little bit of strategic changes. So it'll be interesting to see like if he makes any lineup changes tonight. There's one player that I cannot watch anymore is Dwight King. I just can't watch him. I can't. For a team that this series is so fast, right?
So why has Brian Flynn not played at all?
Or Martinson, someone, right? I mean,
Brian Flynn played all season long. I actually liked him.
Yeah, this series is fast, right? These are two very fast teams, right?
Yeah.
And then when you see Dwight King on the ice, it's like, oh boy, my God, how he can't keep up? It's unbelievable. So
right,
I don't know.
He's won 2 Stanley Cups, right?
Yeah,
so
he won 2 Stanley Cups. Yeah.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show. They don't take your calls.
We talked about last time switching back between English and French.
Yeah, so I have to tell you, I only watched the first period of the last game because I had my own game, so I missed the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I saw the highlights, so I know what happened. But meanwhile, I got to see most of the goals because 3 of the goals were scored in the first period.
Right. So we've been switching back and forth between English and French, like usual, trying to give our own luck to the game, but I cannot handle the broadcast in English anymore. I just can't.
No, Paul Romanuk and Gary Galley, you can only handle so much of that.
Paul Romanuk's fine, but Gary Galley actually doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean,
Paul Romanuk gets really excited, which is nice sometimes, but he gets really excited over things that you don't need to get excited about.
Yeah, he does. Little things, right? Random nonsense. It's so true. Anyways, hopefully they'll make it to round 2 and we won't see these guys again. But like Gary Galley literally said things that made me change the channel. I was like, I can't watch this if the guy who's paid to comment on the game actually doesn't know what he's talking about. So I just changed the channel. I couldn't take it because he commented on the fact that, oh, did you notice that the Pacioretty Danault, Radulov hasn't been on his regular line with Pacioretty and Danault for the last few minutes of this period, or I forget what he said exactly. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is he watching the game? Because they switched up that line like almost a whole full period before. And if he's been paying attention to the series, he'll notice that Julien employs the same strategy in that he gets all his guys out on the power play. And because certain guys don't play on the power play or the shorthanded, so for instance, Danault and Pacioretty play on the shorthanded, Pacioretty, Galchenyuk, Radulov are on the power play. After there's a special team situation for the next, especially when it's near the end of a period, he gets the fresh bodies out there. So he juggles the lines in a sense to get the fresh bodies out. So the guys who are just on the special teams are not out there. And that's exactly what happened. And yeah, he's saying like, oh, maybe Radulov's switching lines. I'm like, no, he's not switching lines. He was just out for a 2-minute power play shift. Now they put out other guys, Right. He like, if you're not paying attention to the game, then don't comment, honestly.
So speaking of the broadcasting crews, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And let me frame it first of all.
Yeah.
So there were 5 Canadian teams in the playoffs, and there were 5 different crews. You had the Jim Houston crew,
right?
The Dave Randorf crew, the Paul Romanuk crew, the Bob Cole crew, and the Rick Ball crew. So now the Flames are eliminated. If all 4 of the remaining Canadian teams advance to the next round, you're only going to need 3 crews because 2 Canadian teams are going to play each other.
Right.
So of those 5 that I named, I have my answer, but I want to know which 3 crews would you advance to the next round?
Well, Jim Houston for sure.
100%.
I don't think the Romanuk Gary Galley will see the light of day. I think it's their number 5, right?
Really? I was going to say Rick Ball is number 5.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, for sure, Houston's number 1. We know that, and I think Bob Cole is number 2.
So this is my question.
And then whoever does the normal out west games, who is it?
Dave Randorf.
Dave Randorf, sorry. I think he's number 3.
So I would have Dave Randorf number 2 actually.
It also depends who's doing. Like Randorf's, if the Oilers advance, then Randorf's going to do the West, right?
He likely will, yes.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I thought Bob Cole had already retired.
Well, yeah, I know.
And so while he is an icon in this country,
Who's doing the color with Bob Cole?
it's Greg Millen, I think.
They're okay. This goes back to something that we talked about on one of our unaired episodes.
Yes, that's right. We actually aired the episode. We just cut a big part of it out.
Yeah, I mean, when Rogers took over the broadcast, they had their chance to bring in new bodies, bring in new people.
And they brought in a couple of new people.
But for the most part, they just recycled the same people that have been on it forever, right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Dave Randorf's new.
Yeah. Why? So who do you think? I mean,
Well, the three best, I think, would be Jim Houston, Dave
Yeah.
Randorf, and the third one, I'm going to have to say Paul Romanuk.
yeah.
And that means
Ooh.
Bob Cole's out, but I don't think they're going to do that.
The only thing that may happen is Gary Galley is their Ottawa Senators guy. So if the Senators advance, well, they play the Canadians. I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have to think if it's Canadian Senators that it's going to be Houston.
They might mix and match,
They might. Yeah. They might.
right?
I don't know. Look, let's hope the Canadians advance and we get that problem, because
Right.
the other thing is the Leafs too, right?
Yeah, if the Leafs advance, it's going to be Jim Houston.
We could have a situation where we have 4 teams advancing: Canadians playing the Senators, the Leafs
Right.
advancing, and the Oilers advancing.
Right. We
But
could have that.
just as easily, Canadians could be out, Leafs could be out, and Oilers, it's still, anything could happen.
Right. Well, the Oilers are up in their series.
Yeah.
And the Senators are up in theirs.
Yeah. No, I think the Senators are going through, but I don't know. The CBC could be in for CBC and Rogers could be in for like a windfall of Canadian teams, or maybe they're just going to have the Senators.
But it's Rogers that makes the call on all this stuff.
Yeah.
Sportsnet makes
So
the call.
speaking of announcers,
Yeah.
we got some listener mail this week.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you emailed me this article,
Not knowing that we got listeners.
not knowing that just a few minutes before, practically, or hours before, Mark, our Philadelphia guy, sent us a comment on our Facebook page about this situation. I'll just read you the headline. Hockey fans debate who slammed Calgary Flames player Dougie Hamilton on hot mic. So, I mean, on the Flames broadcast, which I wasn't watching it, but you could be heard saying, I'll read it, in quotes, "If you don't rip Dougie Hamilton, I will. Stupidest effing penalty you can take." Someone could be heard saying over the hot mic in the broadcast booth. And then it continues. Does he have an effing brain? He doesn't. He's stupid as bleep. So, the debate's raging on about who said it. It's either one of two guys, basically, right? So it's not,
Well, it's not John Garrett, because John Garrett was the person he was talking to.
So then we know who
and
it is, right?
You heard John Garrett's response.
Right. So then it's the play-by-play guy, right?
Unless it's just someone else.
Unless it's someone in the broadcast booth that's happened to be, there. But
Right.
Honestly, we don't know. But I mean, it's not really looking good for the Calgary play-by-play guy, right? So
Right, it's not.
No.
And I mean, Calgary's out now, so it wasn't like, they have to advance to the next round. And
did you hear like this narrative coming out of a lot of Flames fans? That was a tongue twister. And also the broadcasters and everybody. You heard like stuff, and I read stuff saying, we think we could have beat them. We think we were the better team. We just got unlucky. You got killed.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they lost 4 games to nothing.
I mean, of
so it
course they
wasn't
were all
even
close, but you still lost 4 games
But
to
game
nothing.
3, they actually should have won game 3.
Yes.
And if you win game 3 and the series is 2-1, that changes everything.
Yeah. But I mean, it's hard to say that you should have won when you lost, basically so easily, right?
Right.
I mean, in such a short series, how do you say, oh, we should have won? It reminds me of the Canadians Bruins from a few years ago, 3 years ago already. And Bruins fans were like, oh, because the Canadians won Game 6 and Game 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Bruins fans were like, oh, we should have won that series. We should have won that series. And like, dude, you lost Game 6 and Game 7, both 5-2, the score, right? So,
Yeah.
like
Any team that has a 3-something lead, whether it's a 3-0, 3-1, 3-2 lead in a series, that team or those fans think, oh, well, we only need to win one more game. We should win this series.
yeah, but when you give up 10 goals in game 6 and 7, you don't deserve
Right.
to win the series, and that's
Of course.
exactly what happened. So, it's not like they lost in overtime and by a weird bounce. So that's what I wanted to get off my chest about hockey. Like, I'm gonna like anybody in a bad relationship. I mean, I'm gonna go back tonight to the Canadians, and they're either gonna excite me or they're gonna break my heart, and it's gonna continue. Hopefully to the next game. But I really think I need a 12-step program. I think.
Well, what you needed to do is before the series started, you needed to, temper your expectations.
But you know me. I am like I'm a passionate fan, but like I'm a realistic fan, right?
Most of the time you are. Most of the time.
I see the picture, the big picture. I see what's good about the team. I see what's bad about the team, but like I don't know. I just get wrapped up. Yeah, you're right. I am a realistic fan, but I get wrapped up in the emotion of it, and then I don't think straight, so
Check out the Skip and Josh Sports Show on Twitter. You know that little app with the little blue Tweety bird? Yeah, you can follow them there at Skip and Josh.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about Toronto sports.
Yeah, sure.
Because I was thinking the other day, there are a lot of cities in the States that have all 4 major sports teams.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know if Toronto counts because they don't have an NFL team, but they do have football.
Right.
But nonetheless, I was trying to figure out how many cities currently have 3 professional sports teams playing currently. So in other words, a basketball team that's made the playoffs, a hockey team that's made the playoffs, and a baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
So how many? And I could only come up with...
Well, there's Boston and New York. Oh, no. Well, there's Boston.
No, the Knicks are out. So
yeah,
there's Boston. And there was Chicago until the Hawks got eliminated. Toronto, of course. Let's not forget Toronto. And then it also depends.
Well,
do you
Los
count
Angeles, I guess.
Right? Do you count the Anaheim Ducks as Los Angeles? Because if you do,
yeah,
then Los Angeles.
Well, let's say LA area, right? They have the Clippers, and then they have the Ducks, and they have 2 baseball teams playing.
Right,
so.
and then there's also, if you count Oakland, there's Golden State and the Oakland Athletics and the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
If you want to count San Jose as Oakland.
And then the other one is
I think there is a 6th one that I'm forgetting.
Washington.
Right, Washington. Exactly. So anyway, only
Washington
6.
is actually doing the best, right?
Right.
because the Nationals are doing great. The Capitals, while, they're up in the series now, which is crazy to think.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wizards actually
they're up in their series.
And they have the path they have the best path in the playoffs because they're going to avoid I think they're going to avoid Cleveland till they get to the conference finals.
Well, actually, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But basically, my point was that there's only, 6 cities, and now there's less because Chicago Blackhawks got eliminated, that have this situation.
Right.
Toronto's
doing the worst.
So that's not a lot.
Yeah.
And yes, Toronto is doing the worst.
The Raptors are a huge disappointment. The Jays are an even bigger disappointment.
Right.
And the
Leafs are
doing great.
That's the ironic thing because everyone thought that the Jays would start off really well and that the Raptors would advance at least to the next round and the Leafs would be the team that would be the first to get eliminated. Meanwhile, the Leafs are only down a game in their series.
2 weeks ago, I asked you about how is it going to be if the Raptors and the Jays, are they going to outshine the Leafs? Like, what is it possible? The Leafs are kind of going to be pushed off the top headline.
No, the Leafs will never be pushed off the top headline no matter what they do. Win, lose, draw, doesn't matter.
Right. But I mean, we're not going to even get to that situation because, the Jays are a hot mess and so are the Raptors for that matter.
Yeah, the Jays are in trouble. The Jays have a lot of injuries and they can't hit. They have the worst record in the majors, even though they did win last night finally. But there's, Josh Donaldson isn't close to coming back. And he's obviously the most important player in the batting order.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk here. I mentioned this on our last episode that the Jays are going to start selling off parts and rebuilding for next season or the season after.
Do you think they would sell Donaldson, or is he who they're building around?
No, I think anyone is tradable. I don't think anyone's untouchable on this team,
Okay.
especially if they continue, winning one game a week only.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's untouchable. And especially when Mark Shapiro first came here, and this is before Alex Anthopoulos actually left, there were some comments that were made.
I remember he tried to is as much as he could say without throwing the previous administration under the bus. He kind of said, like, basically said, look, our farm system is gutted.
Yeah.
Because of all the moves of Anthopoulos.
Right.
He didn't come out and say it in those words, but
No.
he implied that, like, hey, I know we went for it and we made the previous administration made a lot of big trades, but we've got nothing left in the cupboard now.
Right.
Yeah. And he didn't like that because I know Shapiro, he's all about building up, assets.
Right. He's similar to Billy Beane in that respect.
Yeah.
So now he couldn't really do this last year or the year before because the team was really good and was very close to winning a World Series.
Right.
But now if the team starts to lose like this, that'll be his impetus to say, okay, like, we're not going to win this year. Now's the time to start stripping it down. Meanwhile, one of their biggest offseason signings, Jose Bautista, he just can't not strike out. All he does is strike out at bat after at bat after at bat.
Look, Bautista, we said it. Like, I told you, I wouldn't have signed him. I don't think they wanted to sign him. He wasn't plan A. And they messed up a little bit in their free agent signings, and so did Bautista. Bautista thought he was going to get big bucks. Jays thought they were going to make big signings. Jays couldn't get anyone better. Bautista couldn't go anywhere better. And they kissed and made up. But, I mean, Bautista's been on a clear decline for the last, 3 years, 4 years. He's not going to get better. He's not going to be the player he was. He's not going to be the 40 home run. Maybe if he's healthy, he might hit 30 home runs, but he's going to hit 210.
Right. They had high expectations for Bautista. And I mean, again, it is only April 22nd. So
plus, he's brutal. Plus, he's brutal in the field. So,
yeah. And without Donaldson in the batting order, you're using, who are you using at third base? You're using Darwin Barney.
Yeah.
Or Ryan Goins or somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I told you in our
Chris
baseball
Coghlan.
preview. I felt that the Jays had good pitching, which is sort of the pitching's been fine, but their lineup was very average. This is not the juggernaut offensive team from the last few years that everyone thinks. The lineup's very average, and if Donaldson's not playing, then the lineup is far below average.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now getting to basketball for a second. I don't know a lot about basketball. We've established that. However, all during the regular season, anyone who was talking about the Eastern Conference was saying, well, you just don't want to finish in fourth place because you don't want to play Cleveland in the first round.
Right.
All you want to do is avoid fourth place. You don't want to play Cleveland in the first round.
But then the Celtics ended up in first.
Well, then the Celtics ended up in first. So now the Wizards, who finished in fourth, they're probably smacking their lips because they're like, well, if we win the first round, now we're facing Boston instead of Cleveland.
Well, maybe not even Boston. Boston's not even winning their series, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So even better. So if we win our first round, we won't have to face Cleveland in the next round, but we might not even have to face Boston in the next round. We might get to face Chicago.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
so
even if
how,
the Raptors,
how easy a path are the Wizards going to have?
Yeah, and even if the Raptors somehow can get their act together against Milwaukee, which I'm not convinced they are, there's no way they're getting past Cleveland. I mean, not the way they're currently playing.
I haven't seen 1 minute of any NBA playoff.
Well, look, Cleveland's not playing great. They've squeaked out every game against Indiana. Indiana's giving them all they can. I mean, Indiana was winning by 26 points at the half the other day, and
Indiana was going to have to play perfect in order to win, right?
And Indiana's giving Cleveland what they can, but LeBron is too good, so that's what it comes down to. And the same thing will happen in the next round, whoever they play. I don't think Cleveland's a great team, but LeBron is too good, so it's going to take the Warriors to knock them off. Honestly.
So the Wizards, they must be pretty happy right now. They're up 2-0 in their series, and they're looking at their next opponent, and they're thinking it probably is going to be Chicago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Celtics won yesterday, and Rajon Rondo is out for the series. He broke his thumb. So I think the Celtics could come back. But I don't think they're going far because I think a lot of the weaknesses of the Celtics were a little bit exposed by the Bulls. So...
the other thing is if the Wizards do end up winning and end up playing the Bulls instead of the Celtics, the Wizards will have home court, whereas if they play the Celtics, they won't.
The Wizards can make it to the finals.
well, they're going to have to go through Cleveland at some
They
point.
they gave Cleveland all they could handle this year.
So the point being that everyone who assumed that Cleveland was going to go easily to the finals,
Yeah.
it's not going to be as easy a road as everyone once thought. And there are other teams that have a chance.
Yeah.
That's all I was trying to say.
Going back to Toronto, I wonder what it'll be an interesting offseason for the Raptors if they lose the first round.
Similar to the Jays, will they rebuild?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Dwayne Casey, is his job in jeopardy? I don't know. They seem to like him, but
The current GM didn't hire Dwayne Casey.
I know.
He inherited Dwayne Casey.
yeah, but he extended him too, right? So,
Right.
And then Lowry's a free agent, and he's 31 years old. Are they going to give Lowry a huge max contract? Because I mean, if there's any player that's going to, like, going back to what we said about being a scapegoat, I mean, if there's any one player on the Raptors that's going to take the blame for the loss, it's going to be Lowry, because it's a recurring theme that he can't in the playoffs. All of a sudden, he can't shoot, right? So I don't know. It could be interesting. I think if they lose, Lowry's not going to come back, and it'll be like the first time ever that it'll be like, usually it's the star players who turn away from the Raptors to go for greener pastures somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Raptors and free agents haven't always worked well, right? Players tend to leave. I think this will be one of the few times where it's the Raptors who are going to say, sorry, we don't really want you anymore.
Right.
You know?
Well, if he does leave, I mean, then I think it's an entire rebuilding situation.
Well, I'm not so sure, because they signed DeRozan to a huge contract, so they can still build a team around DeRozan, Ibaka, and if they can get a different point guard. And then there's tons of point guards in the draft this year. I mean, I know they don't have a high draft pick, but they could maybe get someone.
If you're a team in the Eastern Conference,
Yeah,
and LeBron James is who LeBron James is in his, well, maybe a little bit past his prime, but still an amazing player.
yeah.
Like, do you just sit there and say, well, let's just wait till LeBron James gets traded to the other conference or retires?
Well, I don't know,
Because
well, look, he's on the decline. Look,
he has gone to the finals, the
Every
NBA
year.
finals. What is it, 6 years in a row?
every year. Yeah,
So
But-
so it's like, doesn't matter what other team you are in the conference. It doesn't matter who you have on your roster. You're going to have to face him at some point, and you're probably going to lose.
the thing is, he's getting older, so his skills are diminishing. I mean, the LeBron of 5 years ago is way better than the LeBron of this year.
Of
But
course, 100%.
but the LeBron of this year is still the best player in the league. So
Although he's not going to win the MVP.
no, I mean, when I say the best player in the league, it's like 5 years ago it was clear LeBron was so much better than everybody. Now you can talk about it, but he's still so much better than everybody.
Right.
I mean, there's never been like an athlete like this. I said this to my son 10 years ago. We've never seen an athlete like LeBron James in the NBA. You can talk about Magic Johnson. You can talk about Michael Jordan. I still think Michael Jordan's the best player ever. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But there's never been a combination of power and skill and basketball sense, so to speak. I mean, he's a tremendous passer, like basketball IQ, as LeBron James. He's literally the entire package. You know,
he could play football. That's how big he is.
I know you don't follow soccer, but like, there's a lot of stuff about, like, there's this kind of what if situation that's gone around for a few years. Like, what if American kids were brought up with soccer, and because right now the best athletes, I mean, it's a country of 350 million people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you grow up, you put your kids in sports, and then they become good at it and whatever. So the best athletes are going to play baseball, basketball, or football. Baseball to the lesser extent. It's basketball and football. That's where the best athletes are. And that's why USA Hockey has trouble, because they are picking from a smaller pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if, like, LeBron James was playing, like, for the U.S. national soccer team.
Yeah, then you'd have kids wanting to play soccer.
But, like, can you imagine this guy, 6'8", could run faster than everybody? Like, can you imagine? Like, it would be crazy.
So you don't need to be tall to play soccer.
I know, but just imagine how huge he is and how athletic he is. Like, when you think about, well, I mean, you don't follow soccer, but, like, there are, like, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, okay? You've heard of him, obviously,
I've heard of him,
right?
yes, of course.
So he's like 6 foot whatever. He's kind of a giant, He's a combination of skills, not so much speed, but like he's an incredible goal scorer. Imagine you have LeBron James, just like beating you up physically, outracing you to every ball. Like it would be
and
nuts.
winning all the battles.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's just. It would be incredible to see if like one of these incredible super athletes would play a different sport. I don't know. It'd be weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had Bo Jackson who played two
Yeah,
sports. You
yeah.
had Deion Sanders who played two sports.
We were just talking about Bo Jackson at the dinner table last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't come up very often.
No, it was weird.
Was it Selena that brought it up?
No, it was Matthew. He was
Okay.
telling my wife about Bo Jackson. And
Okay.
she was impressed that he kind of knew about him.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is back.
So that's what's going on in Montreal and Toronto.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you have any? I mean, I've unburdened myself with a kind of like a perpetual what bugs me in that my relationship with sports teams. But I guess that's the same. What I'm going through with the Canadians, and to a lesser extent you, is what all fans go through with their teams, right? You love them, the long-suffering fan, you love them, you love your team and you hate your team at the same time,
Speaking of the Canadians, one thing I didn't mention, are you keeping track? Do you have like a tote board at your house? How many times Shea Weber's going to hit the post?
Oh, God. I mean, look, we just said like it's so hard to score goals, right?
Yeah.
And the top goal scorer in the regular season, Max Pacioretty, hasn't scored. He wasn't their second leading goal scorer this year, Galchenyuk, but he's certainly their second most dangerous offensive player, when healthy and everything. He scored 30 goals last year. He hasn't scored, and he looks completely lost. And Shea Weber, who, routinely scores goals from the point, keeps hitting the post or the crossbar. So I'm hopeful that, like, Pacioretty can score a goal tonight, and that might be, the end. He can get on a roll. He's an incredibly streaky player, right?
He needs to get the monkey off his back.
He's a very, very streaky player. So it's
if he scores, he could get a hat trick.
yeah. So like, hopefully, if he scores, it can carry over for a few games.
So I want to tell you what's bugging me.
Yeah. So like I was about to say, like I've got something off my chest that's kind of like not what's bugging me, but it's something that's more like what's tormenting me. But maybe you have something that you want to get off your chest.
You're kidding me? Boy, are you bugging me, man. I'm gonna nail. Ooh, God. I'm getting bugged now. Whoa, man.
It's not as huge as yours. It's a small what bugs me, but it does bug me.
Okay.
So the Leafs have won 2 games in this series.
Yeah.
And they won game 3 in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you hear this all the time. It's not just the Leafs series. It's any series. It's any sport. It's any team. So this has nothing to do with the Leafs. But I heard this on the radio the day after the Leafs won. I think the reporter on the radio said, this is the first Leafs win. This is the first Leafs playoff win in Toronto since May of 2013, which makes it sound like it's such a long time ago, because it is a long time ago. However,
They haven't played a game.
That's right. The guy neglected to mention that they haven't played a playoff game in Toronto since 2013. So obviously they haven't won a game in Toronto since 2013. I just, when they frame these stats the way they frame them, and they neglect to insert some missing information, it makes it sound like it's a lot worse or a lot better than what it really is.
Now, I'm about to tell you something, and our number one fan, Mark from Philadelphia, is going to laugh his butt off when he hears me say this. But so, I don't know if you remember in the Montreal Gazette, they used to have Ian McDonald. He used to pick the football games, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
So they used to come up with stats. He used to come up with stats. The Packers are 4-0 when coming off a bye week in December for day games when the temperature is below 32. I mean, 4-0, like, wow, okay, man, they're 4-0. Well, the thing is, it's they've only ever played 4 games, and it's like going back to 1962.
Yeah, exactly. So you can frame any stat any way you want.
Yeah.
If you insist on leaving out certain information.
Yeah,
Of course.
I do like that. What bugs me? It bugs me all the time. It makes me crazy. Actually, sometimes I'm like, are these people's like? Do they think fans are stupid? They do. Actually, I guess because
No, because if you're not like an avid hockey fan or an avid sports fan, and you hear on the news, on the way to work in the morning,
Yeah.
oh, the Leafs haven't won a home playoff game since 2014, you're probably
Yeah.
thinking, oh wow, that's a long time ago. Well, it's because they haven't played a home playoff game since 2014. So how could they have won one?
this happened in the World Series this year, when like someone would get a hit, they're like, that's the first World Series hit for a Cub since 1908, like
Of course, because they haven't played in the World Series since 1908.
there was all kinds of stats like that. That was to the extreme, and I think for those they were kind of assuming
They were doing it on purpose.
They were doing it on purpose, but
For
it's still
effect.
for effect, but it still illustrates the nonsense of it. So
Right.
yeah. All right, so good. What bugs me?
To the news portion of the show.
Yeah.
It's a very short segment here.
Yeah.
Just wanted to announce to all the fans out there that Grayson Allen is returning to Duke for his 4th and final season.
Yeah, great. I was so happy. I mean, he said he was going to stay for 4 years when he came on, like when he committed to Duke 3 years ago. He said he was going to stay for 4 years. I kind of doubted it after last year because I was like, such a huge prospect. But he did the smart thing because his stock went down this year.
And I don't even know if he's going to be a good NBA player.
Well, he'll get drafted. I mean,
He'll get drafted.
I think he could be a good NBA player. He has an NBA size, right? He's not too small for a shooting guard.
He doesn't look that big to me.
No, but I mean, he's not like 5'10", like he's 6 whatever. And he's got a good outside shot. He's athletic. He can dunk, he can take the ball to the basket, but he's not afraid to get fouled. So I think he has like the skills to play at the next level. I don't think to be a star at the next level, but I mean, he's a rotation player.
I wonder if he's going to start on Duke next year because he didn't start at the end of the season.
He's going to start. He's going to be preseason player of the year candidate.
Okay.
A 4th-year player coming back. I mean, he's going to be I mean, just from that, Duke's in contention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got some. I know I mentioned listener mail. So Mark had messaged us about the Flames broadcasters. I just wanted to tell you about an email that we got to our skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Please keep the mails coming. Jamie from Montreal asked us to talk about this weird thing. An outdoor professional tennis match came to a brief halt on Tuesday night after sounds emanating from the nearby apartment caused a distraction. So it's a tennis match in Florida where the players were distracted by the sounds of 2 people having sex.
Really?
Yeah. They thought it was in the crowd at first because it was so loud, and then they realized that it was from a nearby apartment building. So it's a pretty funny story. So I'll post a link on our website so everybody can see the video and hear the video.
That's crazy. Like, how could you hear anything while you're in a tennis match?
I don't know, but the video's pretty funny. So I'll post it on our website and everybody can take a look and listen. And thanks for sharing, Jamie.
Yes, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. All right, so keep the feedback coming. Let us know if you want us to talk about anything. And I guess we'll speak to you next time.
All right, have a great week.
Thanks, Josh.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.